Now I'm going to pop in because we need to do a sound check with the next spot that we're going to hang out. So let me pop them in here. Hey, Eva, can you hear me?
Yes, Drew. How are you? I can hear you loud and clear.
Excellent. It's nice to see you. It's been a little while.
It has been nice to hear from you and see you once again.
All right. Well, I'm going to do a proper intro before we get started, before we jump right in. So just bear with me for just one moment. So we are heading to Old Pejeta Conservancy in Kenya. It's a 9,000-acre conservancy located in, central Kenya, home to the largest black rhino population in East and Central Africa, the last two northern white rhinos, and a safe haven for endangered species, including rescue chimpanzees and the Big Five. Today, we're going to spend a little time with Eva Kimani. She is the education coordinator at Old Pejeta. And then we're also going to meet James Mwenda, who's a ranger at the Conservancy and a rhino keeper of the northern white rhinos. And I can see them behind us already. Eva, so great to see you. Thank you so much for joining the Global Biodiversity Festival.
Thank you so much, Joe. It is such a pleasure to be part of this wonderful celebration.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I can't help but just gaze behind you. It looks like they're having a nice little munch back there.
Yep. So it's dinner time actually, and so they're here. They have to have their dinner. It doesn't matter what's happening, but of course they are our guest of honor today.
All right, excellent. Well, listen, I'm going to let you take over for a little bit, and we'd love to hear more about them, more about the conservation efforts that are happening right now to try and save this species.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. And hello and welcome to everybody watching us from all over the world. We are so excited to be hosting you on Old Pejeta Conservancy, and especially today when we are marking the Global BioFest Week. We're so excited to be part of this amazing celebration. My name is Eva Kimani, as Joe has introduced me, and I have my colleagues as well behind the camera, and we will get to meet a lot of them. We'll get to meet some of them today, including James Mwenda, who is one of the amazing keepers of the last two northern white rhinos. But yeah, and of course we have our guests of honor who are the last two northern white rhinos on the planet. And it's quite interesting to say those words, right? The last two of a subspecies on the entire planet. It really hits home, right? To imagine that these are the last remaining of their kind. But it wasn't always like this. In fact, as late as the 1960s, a little over 2,000 northern white rhinos roamed freely in their range countries of Chad, Central African Republic, Sudan, and northern West Uganda. However, because of increased poaching and civil wars in some of these countries like the DRC, and Sudan, these animals were wiped in their thousands in their native homeland and in the wild, to a point where in around 1980s, there only remained about 15 individuals in the Garamba National Park in the DRC. And a few years later, by the time it got to around 2014, the international community kind of put on their weight of support to Garamba to try and help this species recover. And by 2003, they had, by about 1994, they were able to. 1994, they had 15 rhinos in Garamba, but by 2003, they had been able to recover those species up to about 30 individuals, and there was some hope. It seemed hopeful that this species was recovering. However, by 2006, poaching pressure came back again, and the numbers began to decline. And over the years, the government in DRC got a proposal from the international community to say, let's move a few individuals, maybe 5, to a country like Kenya, where they can temporarily be to be able to help them recover and save them from the pressure of poaching. However, although the government in Congo had agreed to this proposal in the beginning, towards the end they kind of pulled out. And in fact, by 2006, it was only said that there were 4 individuals in DRC. By 2007, there was no known northern white rhino in the wild. But to take you back a little bit, in 1975, a team of researchers and zoo specialists at the Czech Republic had captured 6 animals from Sudan. And part of those 6 animals was 2-year-old Sudan at the time, and they were taken to the Czech Republic zoo called Davakrolov Zoo. Davakrolov at the time was the only zoo outside of Africa to have the largest collection of African flora and fauna that they were trying to help recover. So these individuals, 6 of them went to the Czech Republic, and they were there for years. And breeding continued, and a couple of them were actually born there, including one of our very own were born at the zoo. But by the time the year 2000 rolled by, there were no more births of the northern white rhinos in the zoo, unfortunately. And this really worried scientists and the international community to say, these animals had started to get older, they were past their breeding age, and it was a big concern that they were not going to be able to recover this species. So it was decided that potentially bringing these animals back to their native homeland in Africa would stimulate breeding, would sort of bring a sense of familiarity, would be able to probably help them, the hormonal situation with the animals, and potentially enable them to breed. And so after a long search and a lot of negotiations and consultations, Pejeta Conservancy in Laikipia, Kenya was identified as the best place to bring these animals. And so in 2009, 4 animals traveled by air and by road to arrive a few days just before Christmas of that year to Pejeta Conservancy. And at that juncture, I actually want to bring in James Mwenda, who is one of our amazing keepers here, who has spent so much time with these animals. And he was there when they arrived in 2009 at Pejeta. And he is best placed to really tell us what was the mood at that time and really what happened. So Karibu, James.
Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone that is watching us today. We're really humbled to have you today.
Yeah.
Eva, back to your question, I think there was a lot of excitement.
Yes.
2009, 2010 when the Rhinos came, because the original idea was to see whether being here would get them excited, leading to mating, subsequently having some baby northern white rhinos. And in 2010, 2011 to 2013, we saw them become natural. They would graze, they would wallow, they would typically behave like a normal rhino. They mated quite a number of times. We took samples for analysis. Unfortunately, there was no pregnancy that was confirmed upon, after all the testing that was done. So the hope that was there went diminishing, especially when Suni died in 2014 from a natural cause. I think I found him in the morning after the normal checkup. He died of natural causes. And this left 2 rhinos, Sudan and Angalifu, who was in the San Diego Zoo. And with that, later on in 2014, Angalifu died, leaving Sudan as the last surviving male northern white rhino. And the problem with Sudan is that he was a bit aged, he was very old, and he had a problem with his hind legs that would not allow him to mount on the females well. And so that kind of inhibited the mating procedure. And I think scientists now have to start thinking outside the box. What else could they do to save them?
Yeah. So they did arrive as 4 animals, right?
Yeah.
And those were 2 males and 2 females?
Yes.
What were the names of the animals that arrived?
So the 2 females were Najin and Batu, the ones that you've seen here.
Yeah.
And the males were Suni and Sudan.
Mm-hmm. So we essentially, by 2014, after losing Suni, who was one of the males that arrived, were left with a lone male on the planet, right?
Yeah.
How does that feel to you think for an animal to be the last male of its kind?
I mean, to be honest, Eva, it's really tragic to just alone call Sudan the last male standing. It comes with a lot of emotional investment to realize the weight of what it represented in terms of species extinction at a time like now. And I would label the whole essence, especially working around him, being one of the caretakers that looked after him, an emotional free fall, waking up every day, realizing that this is happening. Because people tend to think extinction is an abstract idea. It happens. It happened to the dinosaurs, to the dodo birds, to the passenger pigeons, but we haven't really lived the moment and realized and see it happen. And so Sudan being the last male northern white rhino, he carried a lot of weight. He was kind of the emblem of what extinction extinction looked like.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you mentioned extinction because it's something that we've grappled with here at Pejeta. And especially the Global Biofest Week really focusing on extinction and as well good news conservation stories. How are we trying to move away from that brink of extinction? What are some of those things you mentioned that scientists thought outside the box to help these animals move away from extinction?
So scientists have really been trying to work different ways. There's some that have invested in trying artificial insemination as a way of saving the northern white rhinos. Unfortunately, there is limited resources, I would say, in terms of like semen that can be enough to facilitate artificial insemination. And so other scientists have been working on in vitro fertilization, which sort of seems to be the remedy at this point because scientists have, for the very first time, devised a technology to collect eggs from the female rhinos, Najin and Fatu, and they have 5 times collected eggs, oocytes from these 2 females. They've flown them to Italy, where we have experts in embryo development. So far, they've created 9 viable embryos that are frozen in nitrogen awaiting transfer to surrogate moms. We have already identified 5 southern whites that are going to be surrogate moms. We have also identified a male rhino that is going to be the teaser bull who has been sterilized. So the next step, as we're speaking now, is to introduce the males to the surrogate moms. And when the females come on heat, because it's more natural for the male rhino to detect when the females are on heat, then scientists we will report to scientists, and then they will come and do the first embryo transfer to the surrogate moms. And when that is done, then we will be hopeful in the next 17 months we'll have a baby northern white rhino.
Yeah, wow, amazing. We've been part of this story. You most especially have been part of this story, and maybe just to take you back. So we had Sudan, right? And you mentioned that he was getting older, and you also mentioned that we have selected some surrogate moms. Why can't our 2 last northern white rhino be the moms of these embryos that we have?
Yeah, and unfortunately, an analysis of the female in 2014 revealed that none of the 2 is viable for carrying a pregnancy now. As you've seen, Najin walking around, she has a problem, a severe problem with her hind legs. And that's kind of affects her, especially if she has to carry a pregnancy to term, because their gestation period is like 16, 17 months, and they give birth to a calf around 40 to 50 kgs at that time. So for her to carry a pregnancy to term with the conditions of her leg at this point would be a difficult job for her. Secondly, she is 31 years old, pretty much advanced if we have to talk about age in rhinos. And Fatu, on the other hand, has a uterine disorder that has to be fixed before she can comfortably carry a pregnancy. So it was an issue of weighing options. Should we try fix Fatu's condition, or should we try to collect as many eggs as possible, create as many embryos as possible, and then potentially implant them into surrogate moms and create a better chance of having multiple births of northern white rhinos compared to giving the responsibility to a single rhino like Fatu.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as well as on top of the issues that were there, Sudan, as you mentioned, was getting very old. And I don't know if I'm sure the story of Sudan is such a famous story. And of course, he's not here with us. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about that journey and how Sudan is no longer with us and what happened after that point.
Yes, as age went, Sudan went growing old and old, and I think at the later stages of his life, he developed an infection on his right hind leg that really didn't respond well to treatment, adding that his immunity was getting low because of old age, and also he was sleeping on one side more over the other, a common problem with very old beings. So this added more problems, the pressure to the wound that now worsened and worsened over with time, until at the later stages, he could hardly walk, he could hardly eat, he could hardly do anything. And we felt like he was really struggling, and there was no hope that the wound would be really be treated at that point. So we had to put him to sleep as a way of relieving him the pain. And that's kind of how was able to leave us.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I remember that day very well. It felt like there was a dark cloud over all Pejeta, really, and everybody, you could sense that there was such a heavy sense of sadness on that day. But it's interesting that science really has come into play in this kind of a situation, being the first of its kind. Now you said we have 9 embryos, right? So the next steps are, you said, to wait for when the rhinos are on peak, the southern white rhinos. And my question is, many people always ask if northern white rhino embryos will be transferred to southern white rhinos, will the rhino babies be fully northern white?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, Eva. I think the eggs have been harvested from these 2 females, and the semen that has been used to to create the embryos is from males that are deceased, and the eggs the semen was frozen in the zoo. So it's going to be a pure northern white rhino. And I think it's good to highlight that the northern white rhinos and the southern white rhinos are just a subspecies of each other. So the genus and species are the same, they just vary in the subspecies. That's why we're really comfortable that they will carry the pregnancy to term and take care of these young ones on their own, because very genetically, they vary very slightly. And so, with that essence, that's what we are like. It's just going to be a pure baby, not more time.
Wow, absolutely. So the southern white rhinos are really a big part of this story, right?
Absolutely.
They're
the saviors, you would say.
absolutely, they're heroes to them. They should thank them, really. But again, we, even following up with that question, this northern white rhino babies, what is the risk in terms of genetic, the decrease in the genetic vigor? Because it's the semen and the sperm from almost, a very small population of rhinos that was harvested. How are we planning to ensure that the rhinos do not suffer from issues with genetic vigor being decreased?
Yeah, I think in answer to that question, I think science has been able to make very major strides in terms of progression. So the hope is that the semen that has been used to inseminate these 2 females, the eggs from these 2 females, has been from males that are not directly related to them. That creates a small diversity from at this point. But also along the way, once especially they have something to kickstart the population again, they're planning to use tissue cultures to increase the genetic diversity. There's a lot of science that I might not be able to explain there, but it's quite complex the way they're planning to enhance the genetic diversity using science. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think we have someone here who's very curious. You want to tell us who we have here?
Yeah, so this is Najin. She's the elder northern white rhino. She's that 1 year old. She's pretty much curious. She's much more calm and friendly compared to the other 2. And she is the mom to Fatu. And I think she normally assumes that mother-in-law, being curious who is around her daughter and what's going on around. So
and we just celebrated Mother's Day, so she's got to be on point with that.
Yeah.
And even as we're looking at this beautiful animal, please tell us a little bit. We've talked a lot about northern white and southern white. How do you tell them apart? How do you know this is a northern white rhino and not a southern white, for example?
Right. In answer to your question, I don't know whether our cameraman might be able to zoom. One of the major differences between the northern and the southern is their ears. You see that the northern white rhinos have got tufts in their ears. That is very distinguishing from the southern white rhinos. The southern white rhinos have less or no hairs on their ears. And another distinguishing aspect is the way they walk. You look at the way Najin is walking in Fatu, you see they have a sloping posture while walking, but the southern white rhino has a more upright posture. But we believe this happened because of being on the concrete floors in the zoo, because of the muscle loss, especially on their hind legs. But also, if you look at their necks, you'll see that the northern white rhinos have got less muscles on the neck. It's just because of their habitats where they came from. The northern were more into northern parts of Africa, pretty much dense and equatorial. So grass was going to be tall, so they evolved to have less muscles and so that they could lift their heads high and feed on the tall grass. If you also carefully look at their feet, you see it's kind of webbed to allow them to walk on those marshy environments. But if you look at the southern, they've got more muscles because they were more into the southern, and the grass is going to be tall, and to be short in these areas. So they evolved to have less muscles, more muscles, sorry, so that they could support their heads always down to the ground. Those are the most basic differences. Other differences are morphological. Inside the number of chromosomes and stuff like that makes them slightly different. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, even just thinking about these animals, they are really, as you said, ambassadors for many other species that we are losing on the planet.
Yeah.
What do you think they represent in terms of a wake up call for us, and extinction?
I think northern white rhinos have played a very, very pivotal role in terms of raising awareness. I think as of last year or two, we are talking of $6 million. If we are to talk about advertisement, if we are to talk about billboards or ads, this is the amount of awareness they have created in terms of us protecting our environment. So they've really, really done a lot. Even if for the worst case scenario, nothing was to happen to them, they have really helped us realize that we need to do something. At a time then, 1 million more species are threatened with extinction, according to 2018, the United Nations announcement. So they kind of, if you look at the way they work, they are charismatic, prehistoric looking beings that our eyes are attracted to look. We really can't avoid noticing them for what they are. But sadly, smaller animals, plants, species, insects, butterflies are walking the same road. And I think it's the time now we realize that extinction is not an abstract idea. They kind of are telling us we are here, we are on the verge. If science does not save us, then we will be gone. And I think it's the time we start revisiting our understanding about what we think of and pause the discussion about that, so that at least we can be able to prevent the 1 million species threatened, and even species that are of less concern at this moment, to give them a better life so that they don't face the same threats that the northern white rhinos are facing. So I think these girls and the northern white rhinos at large have really helped us understand that we as the contemporary humans have a lot to do at this moment in time.
Absolutely, and you just nailed it on the head. Really, they are a representation of what is happening everywhere globally in terms of extinction. And I think that it's very gloomy news. Yeah. So we want to give them a bit of good news, right? And we've said we have 9 embryos now. So what are the next steps from this year, and when can we hope to have some baby rhinos running around here?
Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't think we have a very definite timeline because COVID came, it's with us, really impaired the plans that were put into place. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and that's kind of has derailed the whole procedure. But so far, I think we are on the final bit, the final quarter of it. I think anytime soon we will have introduce Owen, who is the male southern white rhino, to the surrogate moms. He will hook around with them for a number of days. And then when we start realizing that he now wants to mount, or when the females get on it, then we will call the scientists, then we will come and do the first embryo transfer. So we are talking maybe probably by the end of this year, the first embryo transfer will have occurred. And it's good, maybe we can invite our viewers for a baby shower if that happens.
Yes, and they have to bring gifts, of course. I don't know what you bring a rhino, Google, I don't know. But yeah, we do need a baby shower. It's a big event, not just on Pejeta, but globally, when these rhinos will finally really have started to move away from the brink of extinction.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's also good maybe to say it's quite tragic to think of the extreme and intricate science that is being used, and kind of try to stop this from happening in the future. It's true, we can take rhinos, we can put them in the lab and maybe create some baby northern white rhinos, but if the environment changes, if the climate changes, some of the species, when they go extinct, it's an irreversible state. So I kind of think it's good to highlight that we don't need to go this way. It's just one of the extremes. But I think if we can think about the zebras, the common zebras, and make sure that we protect their habitats to avoid them getting to such a point, it will just be the best way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have had to employ these very extreme measures, including having 24-hour surveillance for these animals, tight security, like a military barrack sometimes, right?
Yeah.
We have people guarding them throughout, trained paramilitary people protecting these animals throughout. But what if we changed, right? What if humanity changed and actually not just left protection of wildlife to people like you who wear green, or to people like us? What if everybody did it? I think it would make more impact, and greater reaching impact for sure. Yeah. So and we are excited to bring you these kinds of stories. It's a sort of a bittersweet story, and I think Joe, I'm sure people have probably a lot of questions, mostly for James and not me, which is great. So in case people have questions or comments or just thoughts as we were speaking that they would like to share with us, we're happy to listen to those.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that great interview and really kind of setting the scene, the kind of the dire situation, but some hope, right? It's always good to have some hope that there could be some northern white rhinos, some baby ones again, and that would just be a huge boost, I think, for the world. Knowing that everybody's so focused on biodiversity right now, and we need to do something in the next 10 years. We really need to focus on this. And I think the northern white rhinos, more of them, I think it would just be such a good news story.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I want to say, every time we do one of these events, the technology you guys are using gets better and better. This is the clearest that I've ever seen. So congratulations to the whole team behind the scenes. You guys are doing amazing to bring Old Pejeta live around the world. Incredible.
No, thank you. We have amazing people behind those cameras. I wish you could see them. They are on point.
Very cool. Well, James, the first question we have here is just about, the relationship that you and the other rangers have with the northern white rhinos. You spend so much time with them. What's that relationship like?
Thank you so much, Joe, for the question. I think we spend much more time with the northern white rhinos than it is with our families. It's very true. And this relation has to be, especially when we are talking about trying to save them, where we need to kind of have vets come and see them, where we have scientists come and do something with them. We really need to have that bond so that these animals can trust us. And every time we need to do something with them, especially like a treatment or hormonal stimulation or whatever, anything that we need to do with them, it can be easy to access them. It's basically built around spending a lot of time with them and making sure they identify us. The most obvious way they know us is by our voices and our smell. Mostly their sight is not good, be natural. So they can always identify us by our voices and our smell. So spending a lot of time with them now, get them accustomed to us, and they can always trust us.
All right, amazing. And then some people are curious about what they were eating back there. They saw that they were eating, and then it looked like there were some cheeky monkeys coming in there and stealing some of that food as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think we normally supplement them in the evening with pellets and carrots, the same horse pellets. Horses are the closest relatives of rhinos, so we basically give them the same pellets that are given to the horses. The reason we do that is that when they came from the zoo, they were being fed like humans. They ate everything: breads, apples, carrots, bananas, and all of that. So when they came, we were able to cut away all of that. But for the purpose of maintaining their body, we really have to keep on giving them supplements. So carrots and pellets is what we give them daily. And the monkeys, all the animals we have around have these pellets. So the monkeys will always try to sneak and steal a few carrots and a few pellets. So it's always a battle with us every evening trying to defend, the rhinos. Otherwise, the monkeys will bully the rhinos and take away everything.
All right, fair enough. So I think we have time to squeeze in one more question. And I think the best one is lots of people tuning in. What can they do to help out? What can people from home do to help the work you're doing at Old Pejeta? Because it's the northern white rhinos, but there's all kinds of other great work as well, from the chimpanzees to the black rhinos. How can people help out?
Thank you so much for that question. I think bearing the situation, especially at this moment, the pandemic, we really have to say with some of the organizations that have really been struggling to keep our operations afloat. So people can help us by, first of all, when it's safe to do so, or when the world opens up, traveling to come and see us. It's one direct way of coming and seeing what we are doing, as well as giving a value and what we need to protect these animals. People can come and volunteer with us. We have volunteer opportunities where they can come and get a hands-on experience with what we are doing here, which give them a deeper insight about when we are talking about conservation. And most importantly, people can donate to support our cause. If you visit our website, which is www.pejetaconservancy.org, you can be able to look through the website and see where to direct your support, because we have different programs within. We have the community projects, we have the rhino protection unit, we have the canine units, we have the anti-poaching unit. You can really feel where you feel the affinity, but most importantly, everything else will be coming to us and help keep our boots on the ground to make sure that, Najin and Fatu are safe, but also over that 10,000 animals that call Pejeta home are really safe.
All right. Well, amazing work. It's such a great story. It gives us such hope for bringing species back from the brink. We can't wait to continue following. And Eva and James, I can't wait to do another live classroom event. When the classrooms see this image, and they're just it'll blow the students away. And look at that. We have someone coming back. Who's coming our way?
The two girls, we call them the royal girls. Najin is on my right. I think will be on your left, and then Fatu is on my left, and the southern white rhino, Tauo, is the one far behind.
Yeah, and so just for those who are tuning in, the third rhino is a southern white, and that's she's more of like a help at the beginning to kind of help them feel comfortable and be kind of more like a rhino, right?
Yes, the reason was to teach them how it is to become a natural rhino, because these rhinos were born and raised in the zoo. They really didn't know anything of being a natural rhino. So it was of crucial importance to make sure that at least we put them together with a wild rhino that would teach them those natural aspects, talk of wallowing, talk of, eating on grass because they were being fed in the zoo, and all those natural behavior, which would subsequently lead to those natural behaviors would lead them to potentially mating and having offspring. So she's been a perfect teacher. They are pretty much now more wild, more aggressive, more sensitive to the environment. She's really done a good job.
All right. Well, James, Eva, thank you so much. What a great event on today being the International Day for Biological Diversity. Happy Biodiversity Day. Thank you to your whole team. And of course, it was great to see the three girls. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Joe, and thank you for all the eyeballs that you have brought together to be able to celebrate this with us. We cannot finish without saying that as soon as you guys are able to, we are open. You can come and meet these girls in person. So plan that trip, and hopefully soon we'll have you here with us.
Absolutely amazing. I'm definitely going to start planning my trip. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the day. I guess evening. Enjoy your evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you. One last look. Thank you so much.